grab the northern lights.
Lights.
Baby, you just kick your feet up while I kick back. I roll one with you by my side.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Bold, Black, and Addicted to Bravo. I'm your host, Nyemade, or That African Butterfly on social media. And I am bold, Black, and addicted to Bravo, hence the title of the show. But I also love talking to other people who share the same similarities so that we can have some interesting conversation about life topics, but through the lens of Bravo, which is something that unifies all of us. So I'm so excited about my guests today. I have Les and Brandon with me. And I'm going to let them each introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about themselves. Les, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Les Kirkendall Barrett, and yes, I am addicted to Bravo and Black. And I am an actor, stand-up comedian who's based out of Los Angeles, and I also have a Bravo podcast as well called The Reality Reading Rainbow, where I talk about books written by reality stars, mostly Bravo stars. And I do it along with my co-host, Victoria Woods. And yeah, I've been watching Bravo since, Hey Paula and Being Bobby Brown. I've been watching for a long time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into this conversation.
I'm excited too. Thank you for joining. And Brandon?
Hello, everyone. My name is Brandon Good. I am a best-selling author, content creator, as well as I own my own creative and diversity consultancy called Good Things Consulting. Of course, I am Black and addicted to Bravo as well. I started watching Bravo with OC as well as Being Bobby Brown. I remember those days. So I've been around with Bravo for a very long time. But you all typically can hear me speaking on Clubhouse about Bravo. I do have a podcast coming out soon. That announcement is coming out soon. But I'm so happy to be here and be excited to dive into this conversation as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to start. The topic we're talking about today is words matter, just discussing some languages through Bravo. But before we do that, now I know that we all look Black because we are, but we need to make sure that we are card-holding members. So we're going to play a little bit of Black Card Revoked, just to make sure that we're all good before we start these conversations. All right. Some of these are like, there's a right answer, and some of them it's just majority rules. So this one is a majority rules. I'm starting with this one because it's Sunday morning. Your pastor is lost when A, you see him in the club, B, he wants you to buy him a bigger plane, C, he's in the studio with Kanye, D, he's always talking about before he was saved.
Okay. Now, I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
But I'm gonna take a stab at it. So is it one at a time?
I feel like it's majority. I feel like if I see him at a club, he's lost.
I was gonna say needs more money for his private plane.
Oh, that's true too.
See, I was going to go with D though, because are we talking about lost in a sermon? Because if he keeps going back to the time before he was saved, that means he's run out of material for this Sunday's good word. So that's what I was thinking. Like, because when you're sitting in church and the pastor's like, back before I was saved, and it's like, yeah, we've heard this story like 5 Sundays in a row. Let's get the ball rolling to what we need to hear today. So that's what I was going with. But clearly, if I'm twerking in a club and my pastor's in there with me, he's lost too. So
okay. We'll go to the club for that one. All right. Which TV mom is not to be trifled with? Tasha Mack from The Game, Cookie Lyon from Empire, Nikki Parker from The Parkers, Mama D from Love and Hip Hop.
Oh my God! There's no all of the above?
No,
because I wouldn't mess with any of them.
Right.
To be trifled with?
Yes.
Cookie?
Yeah, I was gonna go Cookie.
I was gonna say it either has to be Cookie. It's not Nikki Parker. Nikki Parker doesn't say trifle.
No.
Who are the other two?
Tasha Mack from The Game or Mama D, both of whom are good, but I feel like Mama D is more bark than bite. Love her though.
You know what? I'm going to switch and go with Tasha Mack from The Game.
Okay.
I think that's my vote for that one.
I feel like I'm sticking with Cookie because she has a little more gangster in her. And so I feel like she would really have the means to mess me up.
I think my favorite Cookie line, I forget what someone said something and she was like, "Look, ho."
All right, so is Cookie your answer too, Les?
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Okay.
I love Cookie and her outfits.
Yes.
Which city has the best soul music? Memphis, Detroit, Atlanta, Philadelphia.
Memphis.
Memphis.
I was gonna go Memphis too. All right. In Love Jones, he's brother to the night and the blues in your left thigh. Is it Isaiah Washington, Omar Epps, Lorenz Tate, or Bill Bellamy?
That's Lorenz Tate. All day, every day.
Yes. All right. Who has the better biscuit? Popeyes, Red Lobster, KFC, or Church's?
Ooh.
I know my answer.
It's got to be between Popeyes and Church's.
Not Red Lobster?
I'm going to say Red Lobster.
I was going to say Red Lobster.
That's a versatile biscuit. Everybody else
delicious.
Yeah.
It's so good. Even Beyonce takes her man to get some.
Okay.
I mean, can't trump that.
I mean, Queen Bee says Red Lobster it is.
All right. What's the best old school hip hop dance? Soldier Boys, Crank That. 69 Boys, Tootsie Roll. EU, The Butt. Digital Underground, Humpty Dance.
The Butt.
Really? I was going to go with Humpty Dance.
I was going to go with Tootsie Roll.
Ooh.
Oh. Three different.
How does The Butt go?
It's doing the butt. Like I can't even. You can't even see it. But
yeah,
it's not a butt movement.
The butt on the off.
I would say I still say Humpty Dance, but for the sake of being a tiebreaker, I'll go with Tootsie Roll.
Woo! Listen, there's nothing like a Tootsie Roll when you're at a party. You're like, ooh, to the left, to the left, to the right.
Yes,
to the right. You know, that's a good one.
But I'm gonna stick with doing the butt.
All right, I love that. So I think we are all good. We all get to keep our black cards.
Thank God.
All right. So to get into our topic, like I mentioned, we're talking words matter. So the first one I want to talk about is they're all kind of serious, but we often see people use words, especially stereotypically Black words, in a negative context, like that's so hood, that's so ghetto. And we all laugh at the clips of Nene doing it in Real Housewives of Atlanta because it's funny, but do you think that we have to perpetuate negative stereotypes when we use certain words in that context?
I think for me, with that question, it's a little multifaceted. I think being Black within our culture, there are certain conversations that we will have amongst peers, relatives, that we use a lot of things that we can say within close quarters because we know who our audience is and we know how to take it. Whereas when you open it up to audiences who aren't familiar with what you may mean, for example, I'll use this word because they use it a lot on Housewives, like the word bitch, right? On Atlanta, they're like, well, hey, bitch, or there's like, you bitch, right? But somehow bitch is like this word that could be anything that's used, but like it depends on who's saying it and who's receiving it and who understands the context of how it's said. And I think with Nene in that moment with Candy, I think it was something that she meant to say. And I think that she didn't realize because she wasn't saying it amongst her peers and her friends and her relatives, how far that would go and what domino effect that would set off. Because you have viewers that say, see, Nene can say it, so why can't I say it? And these housewives are ghetto. I remember Bethany sitting on Watch What Happens Live once and making fun of Atlanta, being like, they're so ghetto, they're so hood. And so then you're showing that to other people, it's okay to label us as that when that's not accurate. And I think, again, knowing your audience and knowing how to receive that, you have to be very conscious on these reality shows and say, although I may be talking to Cynthia Bailey, although I may be talking to Candy Burris, we're being filmed and this is going to show across the world. And so you have audiences who are uneducated and you have audience who are educated to know how to take the conversation, but some will use it as ammunition against us. And I think in that situation, that's what happened.
Absolutely, I agree.
And I agree with Brandon. You know, it's I think it when you use the words on the show, it creates a little confusion. And like, for me, if I hear one of my white friends saying it, I am like, hey, no, you can't say that, and this is why. But not everybody who watches these shows has someone to explain to them,
right,
this is why you don't use it. And so I agree that, when you use those words, it totally creates confusion. So why even put it out there to create the confusion,
Mm-hmm. I mean, I agree with both of you. And that's such a good point that there are words and phrases that we use amongst ourselves, like within our own circles and our own groups, that people can't necessarily use outside of that. But I think when you're filming and you're in your group and it's supposed to be real, people get real. But then you have the people, like Les said, who are outside of that, who don't have anyone to say, hey, you shouldn't say that. And then they start to think that it's okay. And in one of the episodes, the first episode I had with the women, we were talking about respectable or ratchet. And we actually talked about that a little bit, how Atlanta was so easily welcomed because they did fit a lot of the stereotypes of what people think of when they think of Black women, versus like Potomac that didn't as much. And so it's one of those things, because you never really want to be the stereotype. Because even I think before we started recording, you guys were mentioning Nene and how she had been doing things outside of Housewives, but those are very stereotypical Black women roles. Like she was very much Nene in those roles. And I think that the more people get spotlight being those stereotypical roles, the harder it is for everyone else to say, hey, we're not a monolith. Like, hey, there's a wide variety of us. We don't always have to only be Black a certain way.
But I have to cut for Nene a little bit, because she did do Broadway and she did do Cinderella on Broadway, which was not stereotypical.
No, I think she can act. I just think that she was cast.
Right. You were more so saying she was typecast. And
typecasted. Yeah.
So where I come with that too, I agree and I disagree. So I agree on the end of, I think Nene is a great actress. And before Atlanta, she was sharing how she was an extra, I believe, on like the Fighting Temptations, and she was like doing a lot of work. And Atlanta is what kind of propelled her forward. When she did, Broadway, I thought that was amazing for her. When she did Zoomanity, I thought that was great. And I will give her some slack too on The New Normal. There were some episodes that she really had to challenge herself. I remember when she had to play her relatives. Do you all remember that episode?
That was so good.
Yeah. And so I do think that she has great star quality and is a great actress. But to your point, when I think of Coach Roz on Glee, when I think of certain roles that she did take, it was essentially plucking Nene that we see on Housewives and putting her in a role. It's just like when Sheree was cast as a walk-on The Game. It's like when Cynthia, I think, did Sharknado. Like they literally were just typecast for being themselves. So I do agree with that. But what I want to think for myself and challenge the thought process is, should it be on them to be more aware of the monolithic stereotype that gets pushed by them taking the roles? Because at the end of the day, they got to get their bag too. Is it more on us as the viewers and the audience and to our peers, unless kind of like you said, is it on us to hold our peers accountable who aren't Black? So in those moments of seeing Nene in a role, to say, oh, she's just being loud and ghetto. No. She's an actress just like everyone else. Because when I think about like the Seth Rogen, he plays the same role in almost everything. Will Ferrell plays the same role in everything, right? But I don't hear everyone saying like, oh, all white people who play these roles are dumb. All white people who play. So I think it's more on us to challenge our peers around us who don't know how to break apart the monolithic stereotype thought process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that is such a good point. And I absolutely agree. Because you're right, because as much as we say like, oh, we're not a monolith, that does include the stereotypical Black person. So we can't say no one should play that role, because that is a part of Black culture. There are people who act like that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And we should want to see more people who act like that, who are smart, who are doing other things. So that's a really good point. We don't need to watch out those roles. We need to talk to the people who are watching those roles.
Right. And I'm an actor. And so trust me, one of the things they tell you is find your niche and get cast a lot with that first. And the more you get cast, the more that gives you the freedom to go on to other things. Because with Nene, when she was on Glee, that was a Ryan Murphy show. Mm-hmm. And then she went on to do The New Normal, who was also Ryan Murphy. And I think that Ryan Murphy saw something in her, because I got to tell you, when that episode where she did play all of her relatives, that was very impressive. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, she can really act, because that was good. So, you got to do what you got to do sometimes.
I get that back. Yeah. No, those are really good points. Moving on a little bit. So as far as words, many words have multiple meanings, mm-hmm. and sometimes people get offended by the use of a word. But if you said what you meant to say and you use the word correctly, should you have to rephrase it for their comfort? So in this one, I'm thinking the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, with Crystal saying that she felt violated when Sutton came in the room. And then also with Eboni and Luann, Luann being upset that Eboni said educated, and she took it as intelligent, but Eboni said educated and she meant educated. So in both of those terms, Crystal and Eboni were using the words correctly, but it was offensive to people around them. Should they have to rephrase, or should we have to rephrase if our word choice offends other people?
No.
Period. End of show. Thanks for watching, guys.
Thank y'all so much.
Well, because in both cases, because it was educated, and what was the other one again?
Violated.
But in Crystal's case, she was violated.
Right.
She was. Yeah. Sutton walked into her room without knocking, or she knocked, but she didn't hear come in. She just walked in her room. Mm-hmm. That was a violation.
Yeah.
Especially since Crystal was standing there naked in her own room, which you're allowed to stand naked in your own room. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it was a violation. So no.
And I think, and the fact that Sutton didn't just sorry, and leave immediate. She's like, wow, blah, 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 which I know is her awkward reaction, but that makes it even worse. Absolutely. And you were just oh my gosh, and it left immediately, which she didn't do.
Because I've been in situations where I've been, sharing space with other people, and I've actually walked into the bathroom, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so sorry, mm-hmm. I'm so sorry.
Right.
And it's all good. But yeah, the thing is with that, Sutton doubled down.
Right.
And so that made it even worse. Instead of saying, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, I'm so sorry. And I bet if she would have done that, it would have been squashed.
It would have been squashed, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think for me, again, like Les said, no, they didn't need to change the words, because it was what it was, violated. And let's remember, context is very important in that situation. Her and Sutton, mind you, she didn't come for Sutton off bat. She was having a conversation with Kyle about her life as an Asian American woman. It was Sutton who then was triggered to have the response that she had and took it personal as an attack. And in both of these situations, that's what I viewed it, was two white women who were triggered, that these women of color who could stand on their own, could speak respectfully, whether or not that they need to speak respectfully or not, but they were very eloquently phrasing all of these things. And I think it challenged them as white women in that moment. And I think Sutton felt that there was a narrative that was happening, and she immediately was triggered and walked away, made it bigger than what it needed to be. So when she barged in Crystal's room, Crystal's on the phone, and you hear Sutton say, oh, I don't know what you're doing over there. Okay, if I know I had a conflict with you, and we have not squashed said conflict, why the hell am I bringing you your jacket? Girl, I'm gonna leave your jacket where it was. And I think in that moment, Sutton was being nosy. She heard Crystal on the phone. And I think, from my opinion, she wanted to hear she was talking about her. And so when she barged in, I think she was more so trying to catch her in the act while bringing her the jacket. So with that situation, no, the term violated was needed, but I was more so even disappointed with the women around Sutton, because again, it was the white women where they were like, well, you can't say that, Crystal. That's a strong word. That's not what she meant. And then they were like, well, you were meaning it more sexual. And they were trying to make it seem like this woman of color was being overly dramatic when she was violated. Look it up in the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Yeah. She was violated. In Ebony's case, it was Luann trying to draw a line in the sand again of this Black woman at the table is only great if this, and this. But because Ebony was exceeding all of those expectations and clocked her with, I'm the most educated at this table, she didn't lie. But because Luann was triggered, because Luann viewed her lifestyle as well-traveled, speaking a different language, eating all this food, making eggs a la francais.
Which is wonderful. It's still not educated.
It's great, but it doesn't mean you are by the book dictionary educated. You're cultured, you're well-traveled, you're immersed in different things, which is fabulous. That's what I am. But to say that you are the most educated, that's not what Ebony says. So then you're flipping it to say, oh, you meant most intelligent. Again, it was the white woman in the situation being triggered to make it seem like the woman of color was being overly dramatic and didn't have legs to stand on in this argument. So no, I don't think that they needed to change what they said at all, because watching how they operated around these women, when clearly they didn't do anything wrong, it showed what gaslighting was like on television. Yes. It showed what a think vine lighting was like, to see the women of Beverly Hills do it to Crystal, because again, they themselves saw themselves in Sutton, and in New York, those women saw themselves in Luann in that moment, and they said, I would be damned to say that I need to be held accountable, so I'm going to go against Ebony and I'm going to go against Crystal. And that's what happened. And it reminds me of what happened in Dallas. It was like, Dr. Tiffany Moon is only great if she does this, and this. Dr. Tiffany Moon blew their asses out of the water. Then they're like, well, you're too snobby, you're too this, you're too that. It's the same type of defense mechanism where it's gaslighting and basically not taking ownership when these women were not wrong.
Right. No.
I'm sorry.
No,
I was just going to say, and judging from the rest of the New York season, Luann and Ramona showed us actually how uneducated they are. So they acted uneducated. So
completely.
There you go.
Yeah, and it's really, I mean, it goes to show you. So there's this quote. I live by quotes. I'm always quoting quotes. But what someone says about you says more about them than it does about you. And you definitely see it in these cases. Like when Ebony said that I am the most educated and Luann took it as I'm the most intelligent, that tells us like where Luann's insecurities lie. It tells us that Luann has an issue with thinking that because she's not as book educated, she's not as intelligent, which is not what Ebony said at all. Educated does not equal intelligent. There are lots of very educated dumb people, and there are lots of non-educated intelligent people, smart as a whip. So education does not equal intelligence. So, but you could tell that for Luann, it was triggering. And like you said, Brandon, when people see, themselves in other people, it makes them want to defend that because they don't want it to come back on them. Like, oh, if I don't defend this, then I'm saying that that's wrong, in which case I'm saying that I'm wrong.
Right.
And I think we see it like not just in Housewives, but across the board when we deal and we talk about racism and microaggressions. Like, of course, people can't acknowledge it because they know within themselves that they've had those little moments. And it's uncomfortable to say like, ooh, maybe I was a little, racist with that. Maybe I was a little stereotypical with that. But we all have those moments, and you don't fix them until you acknowledge them. And the problem is getting people to acknowledge them.
Amen.
And it's interesting when you were mentioning, that like the women have to fit like these boxes to be part of those scenes. It always makes me think of affirmative action, because so often people will say like, oh, well, it's not fair because they took like, let's say there's 10 spots, like, oh, they took like 2 of the 10 spots and that's just, it's not fair. I'm like, but I feel like you don't realize that what's actually happening is that out of their entire population, the minority group, they had to be the top 2. So you're saying essentially that if you had the top 10 spots, right, that your 8th, 9th, and 10th person is as good as the minority 1 and 2, which first of all, probably not true. So to say that they don't deserve the spot is absurd to me, but it goes, I feel like, into that thinking and to that understanding how when you have a minority in a predominantly white space, it shouldn't be shocking that that minority is stellar, because they've had to fight to get in that space. Like they've had to, like, and it doesn't even matter what the field is, but they've had to go above and beyond. I know many of us have been told, you got to work twice as hard to get half as much. And it's true. So when they get in those spaces, it should not be shocking that they're one of the best, because they had to be just to get in the space with everybody else.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
And I think for me, what we're watching play out is all of that. And it's so sad because these women on these shows are women of color and from marginalized groups. They can't be themselves without these other women always taking it as an attack when they're just living their life. And by them expressing how they feel, why is it that their words, because we're talking about words, why is it that their words are viewed as weapons, whereas their white counterparts are not, and that they have to take those words, right? Like I think about how Garcelle, how Eboni, how Dr. Tiffany Moon are being placed in these situations where they're made to feel that their words are consistently volatile, that they can't express themselves how they want to, that it has to be a specific way. And even Eboni references it in her tagline for the season of having to work twice as hard. And so already being in that position, they're already hyper aware of themselves. They know the playing field. They're like, all right, I'm the only one here. I have to already frame myself in a particular way to make sure that I don't ruffle any feathers, because I know I've been in that position where you're the only Black person at a corporate boardroom table and you're looking to the left and the right and you're like, it's just me. And because I did have to work twice as hard, and because I did have to be the best, quote unquote, the best of the best, which I don't like that, because we're all great and there should be more chairs at the table for all of us. But already being put in that position, you yourself are stereotypically the monolith that people are viewing you as. You then have to be code switching consistently. You can't talk like you talk to your girls and your boys.
Preach.
You have to talk so eloquently, and because you're told you're too passionate, you get aggressive when you talk with your hands. And so I'm watching these women live out their day-to-day lives that I'm sure that they live in everyday America, now in a smaller scale with everyday America, and still having to live double that life. So I know that that's already emotionally taxing, but then on top of that, why is it that their white peers get to dictate the curriculum for which that they get to be within the group? They did it with Dr. Tiffany Moon of, she had the money, but then it was like, oh, but you act this way. But she's like, but I can hang with the rest of y'all. Like, I got the labels, right. I got the fashions. When it comes to Garcelle and Crystal, I feel Crystal is now in a better spot with the women, but earlier on, it was the same thing of them checking her out, sizing her up. Or are you essentially one of us? Like the whole Erica blowout showed that there was a divide, and Garcelle, they made her feel othered, and because she was being real about everything. So it's like Garcelle consistently at this point, she's done nothing wrong. She's expressed herself eloquently, yet they still are finding a problem. Why? Because it's words from a Black woman. And whereas their words, Dorit consistently coming for her, neck rolling and all of that stuff, wasn't viewed as bullying. Erica ripping Sutton a new one multiple times was not viewed as bullying. Right. But yet Garcelle expressing herself, again, words coming from a woman or a person of color, are viewed as weapons. And so I think that's the dynamic that's happening. And I can't stand it, because these women and cast members on all these shows are already working twice as hard in their day-to-day life here in America. It's not easy being Black and gay in America in my life. I can say that right now. It is not easy. And so already thinking of that and then adding on a layer of going into a work setting, that's already stressful for me. But then putting myself in their shoes, they're being torn apart by the world, essentially. And I'm sure that's already enough.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to Garcelle, though, and I've said this before, did you all see that picture after the reunion of Garcelle and Sutton? And they have big smiles on their faces and cocktails. I have a feeling that Garcelle is going to win this reunion. And I think at this reunion, I have a feeling that I was like, if they're smiling like this means that the reunion went well for them.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that Garcelle is just going to let them have it. I just have that feeling.
Yeah,
I hope so
too. Because that smile was really big. And normally, don't the Fox Filthy Five or whatever don't they normally after the reunions have a little get together and have a picture? We saw no get together this year.
Yeah,
you noticed that? But
the Floozy Fraud Five.
But Sutton and Garcelle had one.
Well,
So
I guess they left the reunion feeling good.
Yeah, I'm thinking it went well for them.
Yeah. No, and Brandon, you also brought up a really good point as well, which is that invisible, like, I don't know if it's a cloak, but just weight on our shoulders that you have to, especially if you're Black and like corporate or predominantly white spaces where you do have to behave a certain way and act a certain way. And I love that I feel like we are getting to a point now where there's a little bit less of that, where we're forcing people to accept us as we are, like wherever that may be on the scale of Blackness or urbanness or whatever, and letting people accept that. And I think that that's good because it is something that is constantly on our minds. And it's frustrating sometimes when we hear like our white counterparts be like, why is everything about race with you? Like, because it is. I mean, you think I want it to be? I definitely do not want it to be. I wish it wasn't, but at the end of the day, it is. And for you to be like, oh, well, just don't pay attention to it and it's not there. That's not how it works. That's so not like, we can't just pretend like racism isn't an issue and then it goes away, because that's what we've been doing for years at this point, and it has not gone away. It's still there. It's still a problem. So now we're at the point where like, okay, let's talk about it. Let's really talk about it. Let's really scoop out the wound so that we can actually heal instead of pretending like it's not there and just letting it fester under that Band-Aid. Because that's what's been happening. It's been festering. And now it's like, boom. And I'm glad that we're addressing it because it needs to be addressed. And, you know, I can only say to like our counterparts, like what a luxury it must be to feel like racism is this new thing that's being talked about all the time now. Like what a luxury, because most of us have not had that privilege. None of these are new conversations. There's new people in the conversations, but it's things that's been talked about because it's affected our whole lives forever. And it's not because we want it to, it just is.
Yeah. And I don't know about you two, but actually 2 summers ago, I can't believe summer's over already. So not last summer, but the summer before, that truly organically changed me as a human being with
the pandemic summer.
The pandemic
Black Lives
summer,
Matter.
That like changed me. Believe it or not, I was not this vocal about race and stuff before last summer. And after last summer, and then compiled with all the racist crap that has been going on Bravo especially, the combination of that changed me. And I like, you know, I'm not putting up with this crap anymore. I have to talk about it. I have to call it out. And if you're bad, as Wendy Williams says, oh well, oh hell, you know, and it's crazy because my friends, especially my white friends, have noticed it because they're like, wow, you've changed. And I like it. Like, you know, because I forgot to mention, you know, the combination of not only 2 summers ago, the pandemic summer, plus the crap going on in Housewives, plus the election, that kind of all pushed me over the edge.
I pushed really a lot of people. Yeah.
And I had like a break. I don't want to say a psychotic break because I'm not psychotic, but I had like a break.
You had a breakthrough. You had a breakthrough. You had a breakdown. Yeah.
Yeah. Something snapped, and I'm like, this can't happen anymore. You know.
You know, it's interesting. I love when people have like moments like that because I have those. Like I can see like actual moments in my life where things pivoted because something happened. It changed my thinking. And for me, it was when I read parts of the MLK letters from a Birmingham jail. That's what did it for me, because I've always been like, especially because I grew up in very much like white suburban America. So most of my friends were white American, and I grew up sort of in that thinking. And really had to work to get past that and more in touch with like Black culture and Black knowledge and stuff. And I would have like thoughts, but I would not want to like offend people and, you know, get people upset. And then I read what MLK said, you know, about the real issue is the people who want peace more than they want justice. And the real issue is the people who are silent on the issues that matter. And I was like, you know what, that's me. And that can't be me anymore. So since then, you can't stop my mouth
Amen.
about issues,
And it's
but
so
I'm
true.
glad.
It's so true. It's so true though, because I think about it's the complacency.
Yeah.
It's the, well, this is how we've navigated this way, and this is how we're okay now. But it's like, just because you've navigated this way doesn't make it right. Like, justice is what's needed for everyone, not us just being quiet and just hoping that it passes us, because look at where we are now. I just have to agree. Last year for me, I was vocal in some capacity because I did diversity training and course teaching at certain companies that I worked for. So like, I was vocal, but I found last year I had a breakthrough as well. And I think what it was realizing I had already had this fear of like leaving my house on the day-to-day basis and being pulled over by a police officer, right? Like, that was already there. But I think last year, plus the election, the fear was, if the man that was orange got reelected, the terror was going to fully continue without limit. And I was like, I can't, like, it was just this weird space and time to live through. I'm glad that we all made it through and that we're here, because it was just such a really, it was a scary time, but it was a much needed time, because it made us realize, and I know me particularly, it made me realize just how powerful we are when we speak up, when we show up, when we get people to show up. And the thing is, for me right now, where we are as a people, we're not where we need to be. We're a little bit like on progress still. We have a lot more to go. But what bothers me now are those silent allies who want us to hype them up, want us to be there for their functions, want us to scream and shout from the mountaintops with them. But here we are now talking about racism, especially now within the Bravo network, cough, cough, and everyone is silent. They're posting Ramona still on their Instagram stories. They're still hyping things up. Like, it's baffling to me because, like you said, the silent people are the ones you need to look out for, because in order for us to move forward, we have to be vocal. You know, being an ally or being for any cause, you know that you are risking not only your life, but things around you. You are doing what's right. So that's why I'm consistently speaking up, because I know at the end of the day, someone has to. And if I'm one voice plus your voice less plus yours, Nyemade, like, I just know that, like, I feel all of y'all, because what we went through last year really evolved and changed us for the better, although it was scary and it was horrific.
I absolutely agree. And it's something that really changed for me last year is I finally really got to this point of like not caring about other people's opinions. Like, I truly, like, I thought before I didn't care, but like, I really don't care now. Because I realized that you're never going to make everybody happy. You're never going to make everyone happy. And so when I choose on what to speak up about and what to stay silent about, it's who needs it more. Like, do the people who I don't want to offend, so I'm staying silent, need me to stay silent? Or do the people who I can help by using my voice, do they need my voice more? And it's always the other people need my voice more. So it's more important to speak out about things and how I feel about certain things. And the one positive thing about 45 era and cult 45, which is what I call them, cult 45, is,
let me write that down.
That they are so like obsessed with him, and they so only see that viewpoint that they really don't give a damn about what anyone else thinks. Right. And there's really nothing you can say to them to make them change their mind. They think what they think, which of course, us on the outside viewing it is dangerous, because it's like, well, you're wrong. But at the same time, it doesn't matter to them. They think what they think. So I'm like, if they can in all their glory think what they think and not give a damn about what anyone else thinks, then why can't I, coming from a good place, coming from a place of wanting to help people, coming from a place of wanting to amplify voices, coming from a place of wanting to make things better, why can't I not give a damn about the naysayers too, knowing that my intent is coming from a good place? So after seeing them, I'm like, if they cannot care, I cannot care. And I can continue to do good and know that I'm coming from a good spot, know that I will still make people upset, but knowing that the type of people I'm making upset are probably the type of people I want to make upset. Like, if I'm speaking about positivity and you're mad, stay mad, you know?
And we're talking about words. There's certain words, and I agree with you 100%. And because of this, there's certain words I have learned to hate. One of them is agree to disagree.
Yes.
Another one, and you guys might disagree with me on this one, Grace. I hate the word grace.
No, grace is my word.
I hate it. I hate it because in some cases people use I gave them grace, and I'm not saying you do it.
Yeah.
But I've seen people use I gave this person grace as a way of giving a person a pass.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've been hearing it used, and I'm not saying you guys do it, but I've been hearing it used in that context where, yeah, he said something racist, but I gave him grace and hope that he learns from this. No. So that's why I've started to like hate that word as well, because, you know, people aren't using the word correctly.
Yeah, no, I will admit that I do that sometimes well, and I'm also in agree. Let me say though that I am a recovering people pleaser. Okay, every day is a struggle.
So am I.
Every day is a battle. Every day I try, and I do find myself sometimes slipping back into just being a more agreeable. So I know that there have been times where I'm just like, well, you know, they said this, but I gave them the grace and the fact that like there was a different time. I especially find myself doing with like older people. So I'll be like, well, it was a different time. And then I have to stop myself and be like, it was still racist back then. Just because more people were openly racist does not mean it wasn't still wrong. So they don't need that pass.
Let me tell you a little story. And this is when it came to people using, well, they were older as an excuse. Mm-hmm. So first of all, and someone told this to me, if your grandparents are using Facebook and can use the internet, they're not too old.
Yeah, true.
But so I grew up estranged from my grandfather. And so a couple of years ago, I actually got in contact with him, and he was 99 years old. And so my husband and I, and we had just gotten married at the time, decided to go and visit him for Christmas, which I'm glad I did because he passed away literally 2 weeks later.
Oh. Wow.
But where I'm going with this is, so my grandfather, I brought my white husband, my white British, non-American husband with me for Christmas, and my grandfather accepted it 100%. And this is like, you know, a 99-year-old man from the South accepted it with no problem. And after that, I was like, okay, if someone who's almost 100 years old was accepting, you're not too old.
Right.
You're not.
Absolutely.
You're not too old.
Absolutely. And I think for me, it's more so of and the thing is, I use the word grace, but I use it in the proper context, just because I'm not out here giving racist grace. That's not how it works. Like when it comes to it, and I think about history, I think what we deal with when it comes to like, oh, it's always been that way, or, you know, XYZ, I think it deals with the system of oppression. And I think it deals with whoever the racist thought minds were. They knew slavery was ending. They knew that they were not the only people, skin color alive. So they had to implement a system that allowed them to be at the top in their eyes. So you pick out everything that's different and you make it so that it's, oh, well, if you're gay, you're not accepted. Of course, if you're Black, you're not accepted. So then we go through time and history and we see that still plays out now, where I think about from my lens as a Black gay man, I'm going to talk on some Black culture here. Straight cisgendered Black men who are homophobic are some of the scariest people that like walk this earth, because it's this persona. I remember last year when we were talking about Black Lives Matter and when some of our trans, you know, brothers and sisters were being killed, some of those cisgendered heterosexual Black men did not give a damn. And it was due to this system of oppression that's been ingrained in a lot of people's minds, so they don't take the blinders off, because from their perspective, it's, well, I'm Black, straight, and a man. That's what Black is to me. But if you're Black and gay, you're down here. If you're Black and a lesbian, you're down here. It's like the system of oppression that keeps like extending the further we go through in time. And so I believe that there's a way to break that. That's why when people say, oh, my grandparents, they will never change. No, it's because they don't want to change. It's because they benefit from this system of oppression. That's why when certain people, I was calling out people last year, you know how certain relatives may have a racist uncle, but they're like, but that's my uncle. I don't give a damn. It's my life. So you know that you're benefiting from this uncle in some capacity, or you would be calling their asses out, right? It's
Right.
the same way what we're living through now. It's people trust this system, although it's a horrible, broken, and horrific system, but they benefit from it. So no, some people won't change, but there are people who will change. And that's what I love about life is people who can open their eyes and be properly educated can really break through things, because we're not perfect. We all learn. We all grow. I can't tell you how many times my friends told me to leave my ex alone, but guess what? I was the dumbass who kept going back to him until I learned the lesson, right? So like, it's one of those things where people do learn the lesson, sometimes the easy way, sometimes the hard way, and sometimes it's in the middle. I always hate when people have to learn it the hard way, but sometimes that's how people learn. So we can break through that, but it takes work. It takes serious, genuine people sitting down and wanting to learn and wanting to talk about things and having those challenging conversations. Because like I tell people all the time, I would rather you be out here having these uncomfortable conversations with every racist person you know or associate yourself with, rather than walking on eggshells to attend my funeral. Because I don't have time for this. Like no one's life out here, being a person of color, we don't have the privilege or the luxury to think that we're the default and don't have to worry about racism out in the world. It does not work like that. So we have to fight. We have to speak up. And again, people can change their thought process and their ways of living if they want to, unless that's a beautiful story. I love hearing that story. Like, it brings joy to my heart because my dad and I stopped speaking for a while. But then due to like a homophobic remark after I hadn't even fully come out yet, but my dad had reached out to me last year now. And we worked through it and we're in a much better spot. And it shows that like people who are willing to say, you know what, I'm sorry. And you know what, I was being ignorant. And you know what, I hurt you. And I need to do better. And then on your end, identifying, you know what, if this person is willing to sit here and take that accountability, not always taking that accountability means you're the bad guy, but accountability of your awareness. And then you say, you know what, I can work with you here. And so my own relationship with my father has proven that, unless before your grandfather passed, I'm sure you felt the same way. So I use that lens to the world. We can work through this stuff, but it takes people who are really willing to own it and want to work through it. And I'm not talking about rent own it, because that's some bullshit. I'm talking about real owning it and working through it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I talk about that on my IG all the time. I do like self-love Sundays, because it really is like a constant journey. It's like I talk to people about different parts of self-love, because it's not like you just wake up. Like I jokingly said, I'm a recovering people pleaser, but I really am a recovering people pleaser. It's because I identified a behavior that I wanted to change, and I've been actively working to change it, to identify the thought process, but it's not easy. On my Thursday Thoughts, I talk about growth is painful. Like whether you're growing physically or mentally or spiritually, like it doesn't always feel good. And you really, truly have to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable. I talk about how I grew up in like the suburbs, very like white middle-class America. So I really had to unlearn a lot of the things that I learned. And I'm grateful for it though, because I feel like it allows me to almost be like a bridge between the two worlds, because I did have to make that journey. I did have to go from thinking like I'm Black and they're Black, and so I can't, they just work harder. Like that's literally how I thought, not from a hateful place, but that's just how I thought. So I know that's how other people in middle class America think, and it's not because they're hateful, and it's not because they're racist. Part of it is because of what is presented to us. And I'm actually working on something to hopefully help with that. But it's hard. It's hard calling yourself out and being like, damn, I can't believe I used to think that, like, ooh. But you have to do it in order to change your viewpoint. And you also have to acknowledge that if you spent your whole life thinking one way, even as you're changing your viewpoint, you're still going to have an initial shock of reacting to things, how you were raised to react to them. Right. But you control your mind, you control your thought. So you can quickly change that thought around to whatever you're trying to evolve with. But it is all a choice. Just like words are a choice, and just like emojis are a choice. So this is a little bit less serious, but it's still, I think, important, which is, we're all using texting a lot now, and we use like emojis and phrases, but I think that there are some that are like universal. But do you think that they are universal enough to know when someone is being passive aggressive by using them? So like in Salt Lake City, when Heather sent Lisa a thumbs up, and Lisa was like, that was saying F you. And Heather was like, no, it wasn't. It was just a thumbs up. Girl, yes, it was. You knew that that's what you meant, and you did it on purpose. And I hate gaslighters. Love Heather, but I hate gaslighting moments like that. They drive me crazy. Like, just admit that you were trying to get under her skin. But, you know, like thumbs up and saying K instead of okay. Do you think that they're passive aggressive and that it's universally known enough that people know that you're throwing them shade when you respond that way?
I did not know about the thumbs up. I honestly, I saw the episode, but I mean, I, as a person, did not know that was
I thumbs up, just a
bad
thumbs up.
thing. I didn't know that was a passive aggressive thing.
Yeah. I will speak to this because I used to teach a course where I got to talk to students from all over the world, Africa, Europe, and they would talk about different hand gestures in their culture. So I've been aware of different things and different meanings. Via text, though, it's a text thing. And I think it depends on that person's style, because I have a friend that just messages me okay after certain things. I'm not talking about the full word, but just okay. Some people would be like, oh, they're being short with you, but I'm like, no, that's just how he communicates.
What if they message you K? Would you know?
I think it depends on the context. Like if I just poured my heart out in a message about how I'm feeling and you wrote K, then yes. But if I'm just saying, hey, I'm gonna be at your house later, or like, hey, can you drop this off? And they just say, okay, I don't see I think it depends on the context, but also too, I have been guilty of this where I've responded to something not fully thinking of the response, and then you like subsequently like send something else. So that does happen as well. So for me, it just depends on the people. And so I didn't take the thumbs up as an FU. I just think that people text a specific way. Listen, my grandmother uses emojis, and sometimes she doesn't know which right ones to use. So I'm being honest here. I just think it depends on the people and knowing what their communication style is to kind of go off of that, plus the context of the conversation.
I agree. And I think that in that situation with that conversation, we kind of knew a thumbs up was shade. And I think also, like you said, the person, knowing the person. So like one thing about me, I'm going to text you a novel. I just will. I'm sorry. I text very fast, so I can text as fast as I think. So as a result, like where most people would have to like stop and think and text less, I just text it all. So when I'm hitting you with one word, you already know we're not in a good spot. I'm not happy if I'm just hitting you with one word, it's like, you know. So you're right. Like it depends on the person versus like I have friends who only will reply one or two words, and I don't think anything of it because that's just how they communicate.
Right. Because that's, you know, because I'm a 1-2 word texter, and like I have a teenager, and K is, you know, hey, you know, I'm going to pick you up at 9:00, K. So that I never thought of K as like a passive aggressive thing either.
Versus like me, if I say K, just know that I've just said like F you. Because I never say K. Like if I'm saying K, it's because I'm restraining myself from going off on you. That's like the only time I really say K. Other than that, it's like okay or all right. But if I just hit you with that one letter, I'm not in a good spot.
Yeah, I'm the same when I text. I'm very thorough with my communication. I was a communications major, and as a writer, I'm very thorough. Like I've written books, so like I don't mind sending a novel to people via text message. But my friends do know if I'm ticked, because again, knowing the person and knowing their communication style, like you, if I'm just like, okay, that's great, sounds good.
Yeah, they're like, oh, brother.
You know, the Ice King is coming out. He is disengaging.
Yes.
Baby, you can say whatever you need to say, and I'm gonna look at my phone like, oh, okay. Can we turn up the TV a little bit? So it depends on the person and their communication style.
I agree. Well, I loved talking with you both today. I know we got off the subject of words a little bit, but I feel like it all intertwines because the words that we use impact the world around us. And I am one of those people, and maybe it's because I'm big on communications and writing too, like words matter. Words really matter. And I think it's important to call things what they are. Right. And I think a lot of times we try to avoid that, like by saying it less because, we don't want to hear trigger language. Well, it's trigger words because they are the words for what is happening. When people talk about misogyny, it's misogynistic things happening. When people talk about racism, it's because racist things are happening, and trying to sugarcoat it doesn't make it better for anyone. And like I said, for me personally, when I'm thinking about speaking up, I decide if who my silence or my speaking up helps. And it's usually speaking up will help. So I try to speak up. And I'm glad that you two do as well on your platforms, which I will include the links to below. But do you have anything final you want to say or tell the people before we go?
Brandon, you want to go first?
Sure. Again, this was a fun conversation, but words have power and words really do have meaning. And I think moving forward, I want to challenge everyone to be intentional with their words and intentional of challenging those around them who are coming at you for your words that are valid. If you feel violated, you felt violated. If you are the most educated, you're the most educated. Don't let someone make you feel less than what you are and that your point isn't valid. So definitely when you are using those words, use them. And if you need to phone a friend, call one of us. We got your back. Okay?
Yeah.
So
and I agree with Brandon. And one of the things that, because I too am a recovering people pleaser, and so my motto is, which I'd like to share with all of you, nobody gets a pass. That time, it's after 2 summers ago, that's all done. Nobody gets a pass. If you hear someone say something, call them out. You can do it in a nice way, but it's time for people to be educated. It really is. And, and I mentioned it earlier, sometimes there are people who have no one to inform them and educate them. So there's sometimes that people say things that they don't realize is not so good. So call it out. When you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. And I love Liz Plank. She writes a book, but I love her. But one thing that she suggests with calling it out, because a lot of times people like to say things as jokes, like they like to make jokes. And she's like, if you don't feel comfortable just flat out calling them out, act confused. Make them explain to you why that joke is supposed to be funny. And that's usually a good way of getting them to be like, oh, well, and then they're calling themselves out. So I've tried that before and it does work. So as long as you can put your pride aside to seem dumb for a moment, you can call them out and force them to explain why that sexist joke is supposed to be funny.
That's cool.
Well, thank you all so much for joining. If you missed any previous episodes, we go back and talk or watch them. I think this is episode 5. So we've done Respectable and Ratchet. We've done It's Raining Men, where we talked about the men of Bravo. Ooh. We did I Get It From Your Mama, where we talked about some mother-daughter relationships. And then the last one was about friendships and damaged friendships. And now this one. So lots of good content. So please check it out. Have a great day.
Baby, you just kick your feet up while I kick back. I roll one with you by my side.